We have a 2.5-year-old daughter and have been married almost 2 years. Well, we met when I took her to the dance. We have a 2.5-year-old daughter and have been married almost 2 years. I've known her for almost 6. We generally have a good relationship. We've started going dancing again every week. We met each other this way. My wife has started studying and is often under pressure to get home and pick up the kid from daycare until I return home from work at 7 o'clock. I deliver the kid to daycare, and I have 1 hour to commute each way. So here's our problem. She's a very hard sleeper. She is extremely hard to wake up. Her alarm will go off, she wakes up, shuts it off, and goes back to sleep like 10 to 15 times. I wake up easier myself. I talk to her and rustle her, and she appears to wake. I need to physically roll her over and pull her up in order to make sure she is. But I usually don't do that. I'm not sure why, but there's more on that later. So she had to leave at 8 a.m. today, and at 7:45, I finally say, okay, now you get up. And I am positive she is now awake. She keeps lying in bed, looking at her iPad for 10 minutes while I prepare food for the kid. Then she rushes out, angrily gets a shower, and packs her bags. I think it's an important note here. My wife is currently on her period, and she's got a stomach bug yesterday, which happens to have become better after I came home early and she could relax. She says she thinks it was psychosomatic. She proceeds to put clothes on the kid and starts to take her to daycare, even though she's late. Then she yells, "We're not a couple anymore. I want you out of the house. You start by sleeping on the couch so I can get up in the mornings and not deal with you mocking me by not waking me up. The only thing I ask for is you to wake me up in the mornings when my alarm goes off, and you don't. You think it's funny while you let me oversleep." The kid, in the same room, asks, "What's wrong, Mom?" I try to stop her and say not in front of the kid, but she does not care. She rushed out the door with the kid, and then I leave for work. The last week, she was mad too, saying she was overworked at home. She mentioned divorce then also, pretty half-heartedly though. So, I've started helping more, cleaning up the toys, vacuuming and doing the dishes each evening. Not long after, she came to me and cried a lot and said that I'm so kind when she gets mad and she loves me. I'm very sad by this. I don't want my child to experience this. I still love my wife, even if some things about her annoy me. Now, I don't know why I don't just start dragging her out of bed. I'm too gentle, and she claims she never wakes that way, even if she seems to. Sometimes, I feel as if I'm being made fun of since she appears to wake up and then just ignores me, to mock me, or I'm generally a bit depressed, and it's just too much having to do that every morning. I lie in bed, and I get more and more pissed with each alarm she shuts off. Maybe I should just man up and wake her, whatever it takes, or maybe also say she needs to get a doctor or something to sort this sleep thing out. I don't know what to do. I'm mad at her for letting the kid hear the outburst, and to me, not being able to wake her up repeatedly is too thin of a reason for divorce. She's divorced before. She initiated that one. She has 2 teenagers from that relationship. The angry part of me thinks that she's likely to take another divorce now if she's really sick of me, and this time she won't even have to be poor because we already have a healthy savings account. Plus, I moved into her house. I never say nasty things to her or use violence. I love my daughter beyond words, and I don't want this for her. I'm very anxious about going home tonight, so please, give me some advice on how I can handle this situation. I'm thinking we should at least try some therapy. Thank you. A couple terms before we get started. Scarcity. A lot of what you look at here is summed up in the word scarcity. This guy thinks he's won a great girl, he thinks she's the prize, and his fear of loss is driving a lot of his unattractive and, frankly, psychologically harmful behavior. There's a lot of stuff about this to unpack, but the funny thing is, it would largely sort himself out if he wasn't so worried about losing her. Now, I know the standard thing when a guy hears this is to start speaking with a little bit of bravado, saying, oh well, she can't talk to me that way, I would just leave her, no qualms about it. Well, this guy's got a kid he loves more than anything. He's essentially got one-itis for his children. And if you thought one-itis for a wife was bad, wait till you see it for a little daughter. In this case, and this is going to transition into the next description, it's exactly what's causing his problem to manifest the way it does. Emasculation paradox. This one, it's not so much a psychological term, it's a good red-pilled observation, pretty standard. It's been around since the beginning. In fact, I think if you look back to the very first mention of a red pill in a sexual hierarchy standpoint, you're gonna see the emasculine paradox as the first sexual strategy we've actually talked about. The problem with it is, it's where a guy knows that divorce is basically financially soul-crushing for him. In this case, he admits that she already divorced the first husband, took his house, and he knows if she divorces him now, she's probably going to take that money. The problem comes with that when they decide that they can't do absolutely anything to possibly upset her. The idea is she's using this as a threat point. The funny part of it is it's a self-fulfilling prophecy because the less likely it is that the man in the relationship is willing to take charge, have healthy, strong boundaries, which we're going to talk about in a second, or to stand his ground, or at the very least not get bullied by a 120-pound woman. The more likely it is that she's going to resent him for it, escalate this stuff, which is essentially manifestations of frustration on her part, and then cause her to lose attraction for him and essentially nuke the marriage anyway. So it's a strange little paradox where guys are given signals that they have to respond to counterintuitively in order to actually prevent what it is they're aiming at preventing. The irony of all this is as soon as a man's willing to ditch a girl and actually do what those bravado-laden single guys usually talk about in this situation, the less likely it is the girl is actually to become this harsh, this disrespectful, and frankly, this bad in front of the children. Boundaries. I will never stop talking about boundaries being the keystone to everything else. A lot of guys would talk about vetting. Well, this guy most likely thought to vet his wife, and through all of his sensibilities, all of his understanding, what did he come up with? A divorced chick in her 50s that drugged the last guy through the cleaners and left 2 teenage kids without a father full time. So right there you can say, well, you should have vetted better, bro. Problem is, most girls are divorced. At least at his age, so not finding one of those really isn't an option. So his options are, in this case, get married when he's 20, which doesn't do any good when he's in his late 30s, or start learning some better boundaries, because vetting is clearly not working in this case. He wasn't given the tools, he never developed the tools, and he's not alone. In fact, he's frighteningly common. My advice for this guy is simple. The problem is, him actually getting to a point where he understands it, it's not easy. His boundaries in this case are very simple. She needs to calm down in front of the children, and she needs to stop treating him like a punching bag. At that point, I would have kicked her out. She falls asleep, she misses something, you start throwing some consequences on that. And that's really the key to this. He has no consequences that he can establish in this relationship to show that her yelling at him and berating him because she refuses to get up because she's too busy fingering her iPad, yeah, the whole thing, not on. The reason this becomes difficult is because he has no idea of the mindset he needs to hold. The first thing he needs to do is, once the relationship is not working for you, walk away. I guarantee you this isn't the first time this manifested with her. She was probably like this at some point when they were dating, and he walked it off. She was like this at some point during the engagement, and he walked it off. She was like this at some point when they were trying to get pregnant. Again, he walked it off. Has the baby, 2.5 years later, she's already threatened it once, and he still keeps walking it off, and he's wondering why it's getting worse. Well, the reason why it's getting worse is because he's not making things happen to establish what is and is not appropriate behavior. In this case, cat's out of the bag. He's got what he's got, he's at where he's at, and this is how you kind of deal with these sort of things. First thing you do, you take your child out of the equation. If you don't want to see mommy and dad fight in front of the child, don't talk, don't request that she starts respecting these boundaries, you enforce them. In this case, you find some place to bring the kid. You have a parent, a sister, a babysitter, you wait till daycare. You basically remove her from the situation. Doesn't matter if there's unresolved issues, doesn't matter if the girl's freaking out. Right now, my kid not listening to this means you take your kid and you go somewhere else. Call in sick to work. Do what you gotta do. If he's at the kind of job that taking a sick day is gonna get him fired, well, we got deeper issues that I just can't cover in this video. Anyways, once you've established that, you take her aside and you sort this stuff out. You offer a very strict, simple, and easy to follow set of guidelines. I don't care if you have a problem with me. I don't care if you're having your little temper tantrum. You're not having it in front of the kid. The point here is you have to add a consequence to that. And in the same way that somebody can be a good parent by establishing healthy boundaries and consistency with their children, a man kind of has to do that with his woman as well. Biggest teenager in the room. Kind of like children in that way. So what's in it for you? Well, here's the good news. This girl right here, she sounds horrible, completely defunct, not worth it, and basically a waste of a woman. But I'm here to tell you, had he had strong game, strong boundaries, and established this as not on early on, and this will apply for you too, this girl could be the awesome girl that most people would look at and say, wow, look at that power couple floating around. A girl is like water. She fills the container of the man that holds her. And in this case, she acts just as crappy as he lets her be, which in this case is pretty crappy. I'm sure a lot of girls hate hearing this, but bad women are generally the reflection of the man in their life. That goes for younger girls who look to their dad as a pushover. They end up being kind of crappy examples of young women. And older women usually have a husband that lets her run roughshod all over her. So know this. Most women are average. This is an evolutionary psychology concept. It's been pretty well studied. I don't think I'm breaking new ground here, but men tend to cluster more so around the extremes, and women almost exclusively cluster around the mean. What that means is, anything you see about a girl in particular that's outside of the norm, chances are it's because of social pressure, either her friends, her family, her parents, or in the case of a marriage, you. What this means is not only is it your problem, your solution, but it's an accurate reflection about how you handle your relationship, or basically how you manage yourself within a relationship. And I guarantee you, once you start getting strong boundary game, consistent reinforcements, and you're willing to stand up for yourself and not fall for the emasculation paradox, the more likely it is that your girl's going to be waking up and making you a cup of coffee in the morning. Trust me, I know what I'm talking about. An alternative for this is simple. Either don't wake your girl up, or you wake her up and you make sure she never asks you again. In this case, a cold glass of water to the face first thing in the morning after that outburst, probably warranted. It'd be absolutely hilarious. And she'll freak out, but she was already going to be mad. At least now, I earned it. And you can say as much if you want to. A nice little amused mastery. Oh, are you mad? Well, at least this time it's because of something I did, not because you couldn't wake up. She's had 2 kids before. Like, she knows how to raise children. The fact that she can't get hers up to daycare while she's studying, which I don't even know what that means, but I'm assuming that means some kind of college course. And I guarantee you sleeping in and missing class is a crucial part of the college experience. So if anything, she's acting just like a teenager. Once you get that little goofiness out of the way, it's seriously just about boundaries. I mean, she's going to threaten divorce, and she's doing it because it works. First time she threatened it, he started doing more dishes. Second time she threatened him, he ended up doing what I can only describe as a existential crisis, to the point where he goes onto the internet asking people hat in hand what to do. Once you understand that you're the authority in this, you stop asking stupid questions like, should I take her to therapy? Or should we get a marriage counselor? Because all you're doing there is offshoring your responsibility of the man of the house onto somebody else. And this may be a secret, but no marriage counselor is going to tell you this. At least not during the consult. As soon as emotions flare up, that girl is going to completely ignore anything useful that the marriage counselor even bothered to describe. And they all know this, because most fights end up, the girl has the same temper tantrum because it's worked in the past and it's been established as an effective tool for what she wants. The guy then sends an appeal to authority. Well, the marriage counselor said this. To which point, since she's considering the marriage counselor to be the authority, not this schlub in front of her, to consider berating him for 5-10 minutes, and you end up right back where you started. And worst case scenario, the girl will divorce him. She's going to use that marriage counselor as a way to tell her friends that she tried everything she could to keep things together, but something you did was just too bad. For some reason, you not waking her up was abuse, and for some reason, you actually waking her up by having to physically touch her, also abuse. End of the day, you're an abusive, horrible person. She's great. She's got the kids, the house, and now she's got your savings account. Oh, that got dark. Anyways, thanks for tuning in. We'll catch you guys on the next one. Take care.